What's up guys, it's your host Spartanic Arts DxD back with another high school DxD related video. And today we're doing What If Issei Was Betrayed and Snapped Part 3. Now thank you for all the support that's been going on during my channel. We have 18,000 subscribers and everything's been going super duper well. And thank you to all my channel memberships. If you guys don't know what that is, basically it's the little blue button on the side of my subscribe button. And if you join my channel membership, I tell you when I upload earlier than expecting, or tell you just what my upload schedule is. So again, thank you for all the support, and if you want to join, go ahead. I'm not forcing you to, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into chapter 4, the reveal. Everyone was sitting in a meeting room. Rias and her proj, including her pawns, were standing beside the wall. Sir Zex and Azazel were sitting together at one of the end of the table, whereas Issei and the volley team were sitting opposite Sir Zex and Azazel. The room was silent, with everyone waiting for a person to break the eerie silence. "So where do I begin?" asked Issei. "Why did you stop spending time in the Occult Research Club following the arrival of Ravel?" asked Sir Zex in a formal yet curious tone, with Ravel looking on in interest. She had spent a whole year blaming herself for Issei's death. Now that he was back, she would ensure that he won't let him go again. "Well, considering that everyone ganged up and betrayed me for something I was not aware of, I decided it'd be the best to give them space to cool down before we talked again." Issei answered calmly before looking at Ravel, who was frigiding. Issei then said to Ravel, "Ravel, I am not mad at you. You weren't the reason I left. I look forward to having cake with you again soon." This caused Ravel to sigh in relief and the other girls to slightly glare at her. The next question: "What happened on the day you disappeared, and how did you end up joining the volley team?" asked Azazel. "Well, it was about 2 months ago after the whole betraying incident. I decided that I'd been long enough, and I would go talk with everyone else. As I was returning from my contract, I was going to the meeting room to submit my payment." Issei stopped at this point and closed his eyes, while his hand balled into a fist. Seeing this, LeFay quickly placed her hand on his, making him look at her. She smiled at him, nodded to him, showing that she was and everyone of the team were there for him. Issei smiled at her before continuing. "However, as I reached the room, I heard some not-so-friendly things about myself. I do not want to repeat, but I can show you. Drake, if you would," said Issei, as the boosted gear appeared and a holographic stream appeared from the central gem. Holographic memory scene break. So this is the memories. "Let's get this underway before Issei gets back," said Rias. I wonder what we want to discuss. It's not my birthday anytime soon," thought Issei. He also decided to keep listening and shift for more clues. "His perversion is getting out of hand now. I do not know the last time I had a review which didn't mention his perverted nature," said Rias, in spite of her voice, clear as day. Hearing her say that made Issei's eyes widen in shock. "Not to mention that he has been perving around other girls a lot more than usual. The amount of hate the club gets him is increasing day by day," said Kibe. This shocked Issei, as he did not expect his best friend, who he thought of as a brother, to talk to him in such a manner, not to mention behind his back. "He had also failed to confess to you. I'm starting to wonder if he is even useful," said Akeno, in her voice having as much spite as Rias's. Her voice hurt Issei deeply as well. Were all the times he spent with her for nothing? Was her hating her heritage all a lie to get closer to him? "I am becoming too troubled by Issei-san's perverted nature. I may have to stop being with him if it gets any bigger," said Asuya shyly. "Oh, to think my childhood friend became such a perverted beast. Do not worry, Issei-kun, I will save you. Amen," said Irina, causing everyone to sweat drop. The words of his friends were now beginning to pierce him. Was all that he did for Asuya nothing? Was his perverse nature all his childhood friend could see? Issei thought as his tears forming in his eyes. "I honestly think it was a mistake reincarnating him. I also had hope that his perverted tendencies would go down a notch if he had gone through a near-death experience. I honestly would not even thought about reincarnating him if he wasn't the Red Dragon Emperor," said Rias. These words of hers finally crossed the line. He felt his whole heart breaking all over again. He summoned his gauntlet and looked at it. He, at the moment, realized that he did not mean anything to them at all. All they needed was his gear and his power. He was nothing but a tool for them to use and throw away. "He is the enemy of woman," everyone said Konako. He used to her saying things like that, but this time it felt much colder and much more serious. "I agree with you, Konako. Maybe if I left him to die a little longer, he would have lost his perverted nature and would have actually been able to confess to me," said Rias. This shocked Issei even more. The one person he had held more dear than anyone in the whole wide world being willing to let him die. He did not think they would go as far as they were right now. "Well, nothing we can do can change the past, you know," said Akeno with a sigh. "But change can always be brought in the future," said Zenobia. It was at this moment Issei decided to turn and leave. He could not handle it anymore of their slander. As he quickly left his home and started walking away, thinking about all that he had done for his group and how they treated him for it. Drist was Rias. He literally gave up an arm for her to keep for getting sold to another family. Next was Akina. Were all the times he complimented her and told her that he accepted her true nature all just an act to reduce his perversion? Azia, the one he had saved from the fallen angels and the one whom he had nearly lost his life to Juggernaut Drive, didn't want to stay with him because of his perversion? Talk about selfish. Irina, his childhood friend, and the one who could see the goodness in nearly everyone was not able to see the goodness in him? Kiba, his brother in blood, whom he helped move on from his painful past, was willing to leave him just because of something like maintaining a perfect picture? In Zenobia, she only saw him as a breeding stock for strong children. She did not care about his feelings. And lastly, Konako, the one who had protected her from her family, was against her, called him to an enemy to all women? Memory ending. Back to the conversation. After this, I decided to leave the area as I did not want to listen any further. When I reached the park, I had realized that I was being manipulated from the very beginning, said Issei. Everyone was quiet again. Sir Zex looked shocked. He never thought his younger sister would say something like that, specifically not to someone she loved. Azazel was emitting an aura of silent fury but did not say anything. Rias and her Parage, except the new pawns, looked down in shame. The volley team and Ravel were glaring at them. After a few moments' silence, Sir Zex looked up again and asked, "Can you tell us what you realized at the park?" Issei nodded before saying, "Tell me, Sir Zex, is it possible for a high-class Delphic to not know if any unplanned activity is happening in his or her territory?" Sir Zex shook his head and said, "That is impossible. They would know if something like that happens. Then how is it possible that your sister ignored the fallen angels in her territory? Also on the day of date, I had received a summoning paper from her familiar. So what do you know? So what do you think that entails?" Sir Zex stayed quiet for a minute while his brain mentally connected the dots. He gasped as soon as the realization hit him. Issei then smiled emotionally and said, "That's right, your dear sister knew that the Fallen were in her territory. She knew of her plan to murder me, and instead of warning me, she let them kill me so that she could come in and be a savior." Issei shouted in before stopping and panting in anger. Azazel then said to Issei, "Son, I am really sorry for my faction did that to you. If there's anything in your heart that can please forgive me, just do so." Issei shook his head and gave Azazel a real smile before saying, "It wasn't your fault, Sensei. It was the Kokafeels. And Volley took care of them, so even if it is. Though I do not think I will be able to forgive them," he said, pointing at Rias and glaring at her. Sir Zex then turned to Rias and said in a very cold voice, "Rias, is what Issei said is true, and don't think about lying to me. If I catch you lying, the consequences will be severe." This surprised Issei, as he did not think Sir Zex would do anything to Rias, but it seems that he was a good leader after all. Issei smiled as he was happy that he did not lose his big brother figure. "It's true. But I only did it because I was being forced into marriage with Riser, and I did not want that," Rias weakly replied. "Ko is taken from under your jurisdiction and will now be Sona's territory. The decision is to be effected immediately. You may leave," said Sir Zex in an authoritative tone, leaving absolutely no room for any argument. Rias dejectedly moved out of the room with her Parage following her. Sir Zex sighed before turning to Issei and saying, I am really sorry for letting this happen. Will you ever forgive me?" said Sir Zex. "I'm not an angry man. I'm not angry at you, Nisama. You did nothing wrong. It will be cool if you permit me to play in the Milikix one of these days," replied Issei, causing Sir Zex to smile with gratitude. "Sorry to ruin the mood, but what will you be doing with Volley? Will you be coming back to the Grigor, or will you be joining the Devils?" asked Azazel. "Well, I am thinking about joining the Devils and getting my own evil pieces," replied Volley. "Okay then, that sorts that out. All of you should go to the human world. I had Shamsa build a mansion for you guys while you were in the meeting. It should be complete now," said Azazel. Volley nodded and stood up. The others followed as they left the room, returned to the human world. "Nema, what do you guys really think to do when we go to the human world?" asked Issei. "We don't really have an idea. None of us had an idea of the opportunity to see this we actually know," replied Volley. Issei smirked before saying, "How about all of us go to the quadruple date?" Everyone stopped moving abruptly and looked at Issei incuriously. "Hey, don't give me that look. Everyone here is in a relationship, and dates are a common feature in a relationship. All of you get ready. We are leaving in 2 hours," said Issei as they entered their new home. Everyone followed his command and got ready to change. Scene break. "Oi, Issei, what do you think I should wear?" asked Byoko. Issei came into the room with some clothes in his hands. After examining them, he nodded to himself before handing Byoko a black jacket, black t-shirt, and black jeans. Issei then said, "Wear this and you will look irresistible." The Monkey King nodded his head, after which Issei left the room to go to Volley. "Issei, how do I look?" asked Volley, who was in his normal attire of black shirt and gray jeans. "You know that is what you normally wear, right?" Issei deadpanned at him. "Well, excuse me, but this outfit is good for combat, so I bought many copies of it. I never thought I'd have to go on to a date someday," Volley replied with a shrug. "Ha, battle maniac Samo, here, wear this," as he handed Volley a white jacket, blue jeans, and a silver shirt with a white dragon design on it. Volley grinned as he looked at the clothes before he went to his washroom to change. He came out of the bathroom and was surprised by how good he looked. He turned to Issei and said, "How come you knew about this combination would look good on me?" Issei shrugged in response before saying, "I'm wearing literally the same thing. Only difference is that my jacket is a red and shirt is black with a red dragon along with the white in it." Volley nodded before leaving to join Byoko in the living room. Finally, Issei sighed as he went to the person who he knew he'd have the most difficult to dress considering his background. Entering Arthur's room, he saw that he was wearing formal clothing. This caused Issei to raise a brow at Arthur, who noticed this and said, "What is the matter? What is with that look? Dude, you're going on a date and not on a business meeting. Here, change into this. It is much more convenient for an occasion," said Issei as he handed Arthur a blue jacket and an italic shirt with a cross blade design on it, and blue jeans. Arthur silently took the clothes and changed before leaving the room. Issei then made his way to his own room before changing his own outfit, which consisted of a red jacket with a black shirt that had a red dragon and a white one flying side by side designed on it, along with the black colored jeans. Finally ready, he made his way to the living room where the guys were waiting for the girls. It was after a few minutes that all of the girls had appeared, and needless to say, all of the boys had been blown away by their beauty. Ari was wearing a purple sleeveless last summer dress along with her long heels, along with a brown hat that fit perfectly with her blonde hair. The way she looked left Byoko gawking at her. Kuroka, for once, was not in her usual kimono. Instead, she was wearing a black jacket, a light blue shirt, and blue jeans. She also changed her hairstyle from usual to open to look like a Twin Tails one. Needless to say that Volley had a hard time taking her eyes off of her. Ellie was wearing a purple full-sleeve shirt, along with blue jeans and heels. The said shirt had a teddy bear embroidered on it, and whereas the jeans had streaks of red going through it. She had braided her hair and was keeping them in place using a butterfly ornament. The said ornament had been a gift from Arthur. It was then that everyone had finally seen something they never thought they would. Arthur was blushing as he was trying to look away, only to fail miserably. This caused Ellie to giggle cutely as she thought that Arthur's reaction was adorable. To Issei, LaFay was looking the best looking of all the four girls. She was wearing a red full-sleeved frock, along with a skin-colored hat. She looked like a princess. Issei was smiling before walking up to her and grabbing her by the waist before saying, "You know, if I didn't know any better, I'd think that you were an angel sent from heaven." LaFay blushed before playfully slapping him on the arm and teasingly said, You must say that to every girl you see." Maybe that means I have seen it in every other girl I see," said Issei before he leaned down and kissed her square on the lips. When they broke apart, LaFay had a look of bliss on her face. Issei turned to look at who were looking at the counterparts with looks of expectation. Issei facepalmed as they were cluelessly on dating. Issei turned to the guys and looked at them with a deadpan expression which said, "Go tell them how they look, and do something similar to what I did." Somehow, getting the message, Volley moved towards Kuroka and said, "You look beautiful, you should dress like this more oftenly." This caused Kuroka to develop an automatic blush and she wasn't able to reply. Seeing that, Volley chuckled before her hand and kissed her on the cheek. The next boy to move was Byoko, and who did what you expect from a prankster. He moved towards Aria without speaking, lifted her in a princess carry before spinning her around and then kissing her. After they broke away, he looked straight into Eris's eyes and said, "You would pass as a queen right now, and not just any young queen." This caused Ari to blush as she simply pushed her head into Byoko's chest. Electing chuckles for Volley, Kuroka, LaFay, and Issei. Everyone then turned to the final couple in the room. Everyone was waiting in a bated breath to see what the noble Arthur would do. Arthur followed in footsteps of the other guys. He looked at Ellie with a long, loving smile before touching her cheek and kissing her on the forehead before saying, "If you keep looking like that, I will have to become a full-fledged knight again." Everyone chuckled at that before Issei clapped his hand and got everyone's attention. He said, "All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go on the quadruple date. I hope you guys like what I have planned for us." The first thing that Issei had planned for the group was to visit the amusement park. Why, you asked? Simply all due to the circumstances in their lives weren't able to visit an amusement park as kids, so he wanted them to experience it. And also it'd be fun to see the reactions. So then the first ride that we're going to go on is the roller coaster, said Issei as he pointed the ride behind him. Everyone looked at the ride before paling. The exact feelings were translated by Volley, who said, "That looks like more like Death Valley than a ride," causing a remaining 6 to nod as Issei scoffed before leading the group in the roller coaster. They were soon in the waiting line. After a few minutes, it was their turn to sit. Issei then turned to rest. "I will be sitting in front with LeFay. You guys can sit in any other order you want." He helped LeFay sit down before he made sure all the safety contraptions were on her functioning. He then sat down beside her and turned to the group before saying, "Okay, if you feel afraid during the ride, just scream." The others were confused by his suggestion, but nonetheless agreed. The ride started moving before reaching a peak, then spreading down towards. As Issei started screaming in enjoyment with LeFay clinging onto him for dear life, Arthur and Ellie surprisingly both were calm and composed and seemed to be unaffected by the ride. Both Byoko and Ari were screaming in enjoyment just like Issei. It was mainly because of their nature as yokai. The worst of the branch were Volley and Kuroka. Both of them were clinging to each other and were screaming out of pure fear. When the ride finally stopped, Volley, Kuroka, and LeFay looked at they had seen become a ghost. That looked like they had become a ghost. My bad. Byoko and Ari were overexcited and wanted to go again, only to be stopped by Ellie, who looked green. Issei then chuckled before lifting LeFay in a piggyback and let go of the group of cups to let them relax. After they went for crashing cars, it was both Issei and Volley had reignited their rivalry and only targeted each other's cars while shouting insults at each other. The girls and Byoko laughed at the same time while Arthur simply looked in his head in amusement at his friend's antics. Issei then said, "Okay guys, let's go for a movie before we grab dinner then go home." Everyone nodded and made their way to a restaurant. Once they entered the restaurant, Issei went to the manager and said, "4 tables for 2 going under Issei Luca Dragon." The manager nodded before checking the system. A few minutes later, he looked up and smiled before saying, "This way, please." Issei nodded and motioned the others to follow him. He first made the girls be seated on the 4 tables before turning to the boys and saying, "Listen, guys, if anyone wants to ask, we are cousins with the Sura named Luke Dragon. Also, I arranged separate tables for all of us, so don't be shy and do what you want, okay?" The rest of the boys nodded before Issei made his way to LeFay. She smiled at him before saying, "You really are working hard to make sure they don't mess up, aren't you?" Issei sighed before he sat and took her hand in his and said, "Hey, I learned a lot in my past year, and I am just giving them pointers so they don't get hurt like I did." LeFay nodded before saying anything. After a few minutes of silence, Issei squeezed the hand of her, getting LeFay to look at him and said, "Thank you." This confused LeFay, who was a little titled in her head in a cute way, and asked, "For what?" "Well, mainly for not giving up on me. When I woke up a year ago, I decided I was going to cover my heart in a layer of ice so that no one would ever be able to enter it again. But you stuck by me and made your way into my heart. You melted the ice all by yourself, and because of that, I will forever be in debt to you," replied Issei. LeFay smiled before saying, "Oh, it was nothing. My heart fell in love with you. There is no way I was going to let you be an ice king, you know. Although there is something that I want to ask you." "What is it?" Issei blushed. LeFay blushed a bit before shyly, Will we be going back to having a harem?" Issei blinked once, and then twice before he started chuckling, confusing the young blonde sitting in front of him. "Well, LeFay-chan, if you must know, no, I am not going for the harem route anymore. All my heart needs and wants is you, and I already have you." LeFay developed an automatic blush at how sincere this word sounded. To hide her embarrassment, she opened up her menu and started reading it and tried to decide what to order. The remainder of the lunch was so peaceful affair of all 4 couples were enjoying each other. Volley would never admit it, but if this was peace offered, he was all up for it. After dinner, everyone felt slightly tired, and they decided to head back considering they had to school tomorrow. Issei smirked a little bit and thought of the school. Oh, it would be interesting to see how the others would react to return his relationship with LeFay. When they reached back home, Issei locked the doors while LeFay jammed it in the spells of protection. When it was done, Issei turned to Volley with a serious voice and said, "I am sure you notice, but what do you think about him being here?" "Well, it could be many things, but for now, I'm guessing he is a huge gouge in how strong you've become," replied Volley. "Are we going to talk about Switch following us today?" Byoko asked in a Kaffir manner. "I don't think it'll be necessary. Her power doesn't seem to have grown over the year," replied Issei. Though both Holy Demonic Sword Wielder and Durandal Wielder seem to be leagues ahead of their old selves. "They might give us a challenge," said Arthur. "Oh, we'll be fine, Nea. After all, we do have the support from the Alliance, after all. The information and evidence we provided them," said Kuroka. "I think we should get to bed. It is going to be a long day specifically because we do not have to go to school, or we have to go to school," said Issei. "Nah, only you. Volley and LeFay have to go. The rest of us are overage." and said Kuroko with Arthur. Ali, Ellie, and Byoko nodded at her sagely words. This caused Issei to sigh, and he said, "If you aren't going to try to keep the lookout around the city, who knows what is happening?" The others nodded before leaving for their respective rooms. At the Hyodo mansion, scene break. Rias was brooding. This day was the worst day in all her life. Not only had her love interest, who she thought was dead, came back and ignored her for another girl, she also had her territory taken away from her. It was giving her a headache, but she knew who was responsible. It was the blonde-haired witch. "Just you wait, I will take Issei back from you," thought Rias. With that, she got up and went to her bed, her full waist, try and get Issei back to her and the other girls. That's the end of Chapter 4, the reveal. Chapter 5, the beginning. "Remind me, why are we doing this?" asked an exasperated Volley. The reason for his exasperation was simple. As soon as the trio of Issei and Volley and LeFay entered the school, whispers broke out of the 2 Byosho and 1 Byosho. Needless to say, Volley, who was used to be known as a fearsome White Dragon Emperor, was greatly unnerved by the whispers. So this is the big bad White Dragon Emperor afraid of a few girls?" Issei asked as he snickered. This caused Volley to sigh and LeFay to giggle. They made their way into school, dropping LeFay into her class and then moving on to their own class, 3A. In truth, Issei was relaxed despite the presence he felt the night before. The reasons for his relaxation was that most of the senior ORC members had left and he was happy to be back. Soon they were waiting to be called inside and introduce themselves. Issei, despite being who he was, couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He was facing his past in one way, and that unnerved him a bit. After a few minutes, the teacher called them and said, "We're having 2 new students, and one is returning and the other is a transfer student. Please introduce yourselves. My name is Volley, Lucifer, and I am from Northern Europe. Nice to meet you all," Volley said stoically. Issei sighed at how uptight his partner was and smacked him on the back before the head before saying, "Issei Hyodo, I am sure you remember me." The result of his announcement was almost immediate, as the class combined. "What? Issei, is that you?" yelled Mutsuhara and Motohama in unison. "The pervert's back!" yelled Murarama. "He looks so hot," said Kiryu. Looking at the reactions, Issei could only sigh and shake his head, while Volley snickered at his fate. After a few moments, the teacher said, "Now settle down. You can ask them both 3 questions each." Immediately, hands went up and as the teacher randomly pointed to a girl standing at the back. "My question is for Volley-san. Do you have a girlfriend?" asked the girl. "Indeed I do. One of the reasons I came to Japan was because of her. Before you ask, I do owe Issei here for helping us get together," replied Volley with a small shrug. "Does that mean you and already acquainted with Issei?" asked another girl. "A simple acquaintance is a weak word. I'd say is my best friend and my partner," replied Volley. "How did you meet?" asked another male student. "Well, the both of us were kidnapped by someone, and he managed to break me out of there. I turned and informed my parents, who had led a successful operation to rescue him. After that, my parents adopted him as a thank you," replied Volley, causing the class to stare at Issei in shock. Who knew that perv would be a good person, everyone thought. "So, Issei, if you were back, does that mean you would get to be a trio again?" asked Motohama with Matsumatsuda nodding, as he asked all the girls in the room and glared at him, daring him to answer in affirmative. Issei sighed before saying, "Nope, not really interested in peeking on them." "What?" came a collective response from the class before a pink-haired girl called Katsune said in a sarcastic tone, "Why aren't we good enough for you to peek on?" Nothing like that at all. You are pretty in your own right. I just have a girlfriend whom I'm completely devoted to," Issei said with a shrug. No one in the class answered. They were all overtaken in shock. "I think you broke them," said Volley, while Issei shrugged, not caring in the slightest. The 2 of them moved to the seats by the windows and sat down and waited for the day to begin. A few hours later, it was finally break time. Issei mentioned Volley to follow him, and both of them made the way to get to LeFay. After the 3 met up, they made a way to tree by the Occult Research Club and began to eat. "Damn it, Issei. Remind me why we are here again?" asked Volley. "Sir Zex wanted to keep us under probation until we have proven that we aren't spies, hence sending us here," replied Issei. Yeah, I really hope we get some good badass missions sometime soon. It's getting boring," sighed Volley. Issei nodded and turned to LeFay before picking her up and placing her on his lap. He didn't say anything except sighing calmly. He closed his eyes and just enjoyed LeFay's presence. LeFay in turn leaned back and hugged, melting into Issei's embrace. They were brought out of the musings when Murahama shouted, "Pervert, let that poor girl go," as he said that other girls also gathered around. Most of them were from the Kendo Club. Issei, however, did not say anything, neither did he open his eyes. "Oi, pervert," yelled Katsune. Still, no reaction. "You beast, let the poor girl go," said another girl who had long blue hair. Even she was ignored. "Issei Hyodo, let her go," yelled Murayama. It was at this moment Issei cracked open an eye and said, "Did you say something, Moriyama?" As all of the girls' face faltered while Volley laughed and LaFay giggled, Issei stood up and led LaFay away. The girls turned to a still laughing Volley and said, "Is that really the Issei we used to know?" Volley stopped laughing and stood up for a moment before looking at them. He then spoke. "He is Issei Hyodo, but not the one you knew. When someone with his heart and kindness gets betrayed, it's not unusual for them to change. Though I personally think he changed for the better," said Volley as he turned around and left, leaving all of the girls in deep thought. After the school, three were making their way towards home. As they were walking, Issei came across his old home and stopped. He then said, "Guys, I'm going to see my parents. I'll be back home later." Both of them nodded and continued on their way. Issei took a few deep breaths and then went to the door and then knocked the door. After the door opened, both of Issei's parents stood at the door. "Hi, can we help you?" asked his mother. I wanted to ask, is this the home of Issei Hyodo?" asked Issei. "Well, we are the Hyodos, but we certainly don't have a child named Issei. Why do you ask?" asked his mother. Issei's heart stopped beating for a moment before he connected the dots in his brain. "That fucking bitch." Issei growled in his brain. "I think it's time about we visited Sir Zex, don't you think?" Drake said with a growl. AI did not say anything except gearing in anger. "I see I must have mistaken you for someone else." "Might I ask if you have any kids?" asked Issei with a slightly bated breath. "Well, we have 3 lovely daughters who make up our whole world," replied his father. "I see. Well, thank you for your time," said Issei as he turned around and walked back to his home. He may have looked normal, but anyone knew him could tell his anger was rolling off of him in waves. He went to the park and then flared his aura before settling it down. A few minutes later, Volley appeared and sat down. After several minutes of Issei said, "She got them, Volley. She got my parents." Volley stayed quiet for a while before bringing Issei into a hug and let him cry a little before asking about what happened. After revealing the conversation he had with his parents, Volley immediately called Azazel asking for him to come over. Issei flared his aura again, this time releasing his draconic presence as well. An air of domination went around the whole Ko. He turned around to see Volley smirking. "I guess it's about time we showed the Alliance just how damage as 2 heavenly dragons combined can do," said Issei. "And here I thought you said we would stay low." "When do we begin?" asked Volley. "As soon as Azazel gets here," said Issei with a feral grin. It was going to get wafty for real here. That's the end of Chapter 5, The Beginning. Chapter 6, The New King. Issei and Volley were in meeting with Azazel and Sir Zex. After revealing what Rias had done, Sir Zex bowed his head in shame. He was hoping that Issei would let it go, but that was not the case. "So then give me at least one good reason why I shouldn't go rip her apart," said Issei in his tone steerily yet quite leveled. Could you write it off as a maiden in distress mistake?" asked Sir Zex sheepishly. "Fine, I won't rip her heart apart, but I am not going to forgive her either. What I will do will make her wish for death, but she won't be able to die," in Issei's face now adoring a look of pure malice. "What exactly are you planning?" Issei asked Sir Zex, all uncertainty in his voice, and there was an underlying threat in his voice. "Nothing. I will just keep ignoring her until she grows mad and messes it up completely," replied Issei as she stood up and made the way towards the door. However, before he could reach it before the door exploded, he turned to Sir Zex and saw that he had his power of destruction ready and flaring. Issei smirked and said, "So that's how we play. Fine by me. Divide. Boost. I, who am about to awaken, am the heavenly dragon that discarded the principles of domination and supremacy set by God. I mock the infinite and walk the dream. I shall become the heavenly dragon that sets down the path of domination and supremacy for all others to follow. I shall take you from the depths of crimson purgatory to the heights of the white heaven. Vanishing Welt's dragon balance breaker." As the chant was over, Issei's aura flared and pushed back Sir Zex. Looking up the new armor made Azazel drool at how he wanted to research on Issei right now. The armor was predominantly red and white with an outline. The gems were evenly distributed in green and blue. In a flash, Issei appeared, punching Sir Zex through the room, causing him to fall under rubble. Volley smirked at that before turning to Azazel and saying, "Should I armor up as well if we have to fight?" That won't be necessary. Even if you are both equally strong as Sir Zex in a whole other horizon, he'll play with you before kicking your asses, Azazel replied casually, causing Volley to frown before he smirked. Just so you know, Issei is 100% dragon now. His body can take a lot of boosts and divide. Even if Sir Zex is stronger, he will have his work cut out for him, said Volley. Sir Zex came out of the rubble and faced Issei, who sighed and dropped his armor, confusing Sir Zex. Looking at questioning glance, Issei said, "You attacked me first. I retaliated. We are even. There is no point in continuing," he said as his body flickered away, leaving a chuckling Volley as amused as Azazel and a confused Sir Zex, who slighted before suppressing his power again. Back in scene break. Issei made his way towards the Occult Research Club. He entered the door without knocking, shocking the whole Parage. Before anyone could say, he said, "I'm only here to talk. I think you should send your Parage out." Wordlessly nodding, Ria said her Parage out of the room and turned to Issei, who was sitting opposite of her. "I'll get straight to what I want you to remove the memory altering the charm you casted on my parents," said Issei. Now, Issei, why would I do that? You can't attack me because of my brother, and I won't remove that charm until you leave that bitch who stole you from me and come back here, replied Issei with a smug smirk. Ha! You were right, I can attack you, but I won't come back to a whore like you. Anyways, you are in for it. I'll teach you why you shouldn't mess with a dragon, replied Issei. As he said, he was surrounded by a whitish red aura as he glared Rias, looking deep into her eyes. The stare unnerved her and she didn't back down. Soon, however, Issei suppressed his aura again and stood up before leaving, causing Rias to sigh in relief. After a few moments, her Parage ran back in and frantically checked on her. I am alright. He is on a leash due to Oni-sama, so we won't be able to do anything. The only way he'd get his parents back is if he comes back to us, said Rias with a sneer, causing the others to accept Kibe and Zenobia to snicker. The other two just frowned and hoped they'd get a promotion soon. It was a manacle staying with Rias. With Issei, we find him making his way back as home as he felt a familiar energy signature inside. He said, "You know you can come out, Gregor." Issei, your sensory abilities are as good as always. I believe this is the third time you managed to detect my dimensions, replied a blonde-haired youth distressed in a wizard's outfit. Issei snorted and said, "Cut the crap, Georg. I am in a foul mood. Why are you here?" Direct as always. Well, me and other of Hero Faction's top brass want to offer you a chance to join the faction and become our leader, replied Gregor stoically. Huh, that's new. So what happened to Ko? Asked Issei in an amused tone. Let's just say he grew frustrated because of you, defected of the Hero Faction, and decided to join another group of the Chaos Brigade. It is the most shady of all of us, and none of the other factions have even the slightest bit of information on it, replied George. Interesting. Very well. Give me a couple days. I'll discuss it with my team before letting you know. Meet me at the park here in 2 days. And Issei, said Issei, which Gorg nodded and teleported away. Sighing, Issei made his way to the house before calling Azazel over. When he entered, he signaled for a whole team and entering the meeting room. After a few moments, Michael, Sir Zex, and Azazel appeared via magic circles. The rest of Team Volley looked confused and looked at Issei questioningly. Issei then took a deep breath and said, I am going undercover for a while. I have discovered that the Chaos Brigade has a third faction. From what I know, it's much more shady than the other two factions. Everyone was shocked at the news, but were silent. The silence was broken when Volley asked, how shady are we talking here? Enough to make Ko defect them from being the leader of the Hero Faction and join them, replied Issei dryly. And how do you know that? Asked Azazel. Simple. I have been offered the role of the Hero Faction at the new Spearhead, and I have decided to join as an undercover agent, replied Issei. Joining that will be beneficial. We will be able to beat the Hero Faction and will have information on third mysterious factions, said Sir Zex, causing the others to nod. When do you leave? Asked Azazel. In 2 days, asked Issei as everyone left the meeting room, leaving behind only Issei and Lefei. Do you really have to go? Lefei softly asked. It needs to be done. It needs to be done. If I succeed, the whole world can be turned around, answered Issei. He softly got up and moved towards Lefei and hugged her. As soon as he did, she started sobbing as she did not want him gone. After holding her for a few minutes, turned to her and said, how about we go on a date tomorrow, just the two of us, asked Issei as Lefei nodded and hugged him a little bit again. They stayed like that before moving to their bedroom and went to sleep. Time skip. The date in the park. Issei was sitting on the bench in while waiting for Gregor to show. His eyes were closed and was apparently asleep. Soon, however, he felt a barrier go up, then a magic circle appeared from Gorg emerged. emerged. Looking at Issei, he asked, "So what's your decision?" "Before I decide what will be my role," Issei answered with a question of his own, "the hero faction will do whatever you ask of us. We could launch an all-attack or even go to the recon missions. It depends on you. In return, we expect you to lead and defend us against anything," replied Gorg. Interesting. Very well. Then I will join you." "Let's go," said Issei as he stood up, moved to the Gorgar, who teleported away. Now back with Rias, scene break. Rias was laying on her bed, apparently asleep. However, when she was sweating profusely and was twitching around. Why do you ask? That was the fate of those who get cursed by a dragon. That is the end of Chapter 6, New King. That will be where I stop, is after Chapter 6, so we're going to be on Chapter 7, and Chapter 7 is called The First Step. But thank you guys for all the support, and remember, if you guys want to join my channel membership, I tell you exactly the day I'm going to upload a day before, so thank you once again. This video will probably come out either Wednesday, maybe today, I don't know, which is Tuesday, November 9th, and hopefully it comes out the 10th. So yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, comment, like, and subscribe for more. Once again, thank you for 18,000 subscribers, and without further ado, Spartanic out.